Okay, so let's unpack this one. Today, we're stepping into a deep dive that, well, it just feels really different. Our source material isn't, the usual report or analysis that's trying to tell you exactly what to do.
Right.
Instead, it feels more reflective, kind of personal, almost like a meditation on leadership, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It definitely invites us to think about leadership, this really fundamental human thing, in a less conventional way.
Totally.
And we're exploring excerpts from A Letter to the Future Leader, which was written by Oliver Werner Neidinger, who also goes by Ting.
Okay.
And this piece, it's part of a bigger series, Global Leadership Insights 2030, How to Communicate, Connect, and Lead Across Cultures. Specifically, it's from episode 4.
Gotcha. The one subtitled Bridging East and West Through Visionary Leadership and Cultural Empathy.
That's the one. And you can tell right from the start, this isn't your standard business school textbook. Not at all.
Absolutely. And the source itself kind of sets the stage, doesn't it? It tells us what it is, but maybe more importantly, what it isn't.
Yeah, it's explicit about that. It says this is not a conclusion.
Right. It's described as a letter left on the windowsill where the wind can still reach it. I love that image.
Me too. It's beautiful. And it wasn't made to be a manual. It was never intended to tell you what to do.
Its purpose, the author says, is just to walk beside you.
And that framing, it immediately tells us our goal here isn't like extracting bullet points for a PowerPoint deck or something.
Definitely not.
Our mission really in this deep dive is to kind of sit with this perspective, to explore the landscape it paints, and really get a feel for the kind of leadership it's talking about, especially for you, the listener, because you're addressed directly as this future leader.
Yeah, and ask you to listen beyond the surface, right? Hinting that the real juice, the insights, are kind of tucked away in the subtle layers.
Exactly. And right off the bat, the source throws out this core idea that feels, well, it feels really striking, almost counterintuitive compared to how we usually talk about leadership.
It suggests that maybe the most courageous thing a leader can do isn't what we typically think of as strong, to command or conquer.
Right. Instead, the author suggests that real courage, especially in leadership, might be found somewhere else entirely, in a different posture.
Okay.
It's about actively choosing to remain soft, to stay present, to choose humanity in the face of pressure.
Wow. Okay, hold on. That's a big one. It really challenges that whole archetype of the tough, unyielding leader who's always got to be in control, especially when things get rough.
It absolutely does. Choosing softness, choosing presence, choosing humanity when the pressure cooker is on.
Yeah, those aren't usually the buzzwords you hear in leadership seminars.
Yeah.
We're often told, be hard, be decisive, maybe even a little detached. But this source is saying maybe those are actually the less courageous paths, that the real bravery is in staying open, maybe even vulnerable, and just deeply human.
It totally flips the script. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Think about the moments of intense pressure you face, maybe at work, maybe somewhere else. What's the gut instinct?
Armor up, project certainty, maybe even, try to dominate the situation.
Exactly. But this perspective suggests that leaning into softness, which isn't about being weak, right? Maybe it's more about being receptive or empathetic and really maintaining presence, just being truly there and choosing humanity above everything else. That's the act that takes real inner strength, real fortitude.
Why? Because it means you're resisting that pull, that external pressure to just put on the usual show of power.
I think so, yeah. It's resisting the conventional displays. And the source kind of weaves the author's own story into this as context. It mentions the name change from Oliver Werner to Ting.
Right. And it's clear this isn't just like a superficial rebranding exercise.
Not at all. The source talks about it as a kind of growth into something older than ambition.
Older than ambition. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it seems to mean shedding that chase for external validation, the conventional markers of success, the stuff we often tie to ambition, especially in a Western context. The author explains it wasn't about chasing some external symbol of power, using the dragon metaphor here, but discovering the one dragon that waited inside me all along.
So it's more of an internal shift, recognizing that real power or maybe real leadership capacity isn't something you grab from the outside, but something you uncover, inside yourself.
Precisely. It's a journey inward. And that journey then shapes how you show up, how you lead others out in the world.
Okay, that makes sense. And this philosophy, born from that kind of inner turning, it's shown in how the author's own enterprise, Lóng Tíng Enterprises, operates. The way they describe what they do gives us some real concrete examples of these ideas that can feel a bit abstract otherwise.
Totally. They say, we don't build empires, we tend to ecosystems.
Just that phrase alone, tend to ecosystems versus build empires, it's such a different energy, isn't it?
Huge difference. Empires are about expansion, control, often extraction, right? Taking things out.
Yeah.
But tending an ecosystem, that's about nurturing, balancing things, recognizing how everything's interconnected. It suggests focusing on health and sustainability, not just sheer size or dominance.
And the specific ways they work seem to back this up. They say, we make room for contradiction.
Which is interesting because in most places, contradiction is seen as like a problem, inefficiency, or conflict you need to stamp out fast.
Right, but here they give it space.
Yeah.
Which suggests maybe there's value in paradox, in letting multiple truths exist at the same time.
Yeah, it seems so. And they also say, we treat silence as part of the conversation.
Okay, that one's challenging too. In our world, everything's so fast-paced, always on. Silence in a meeting can feel really awkward, like a void you just have to fill immediately.
But treating it as part of the conversation implies it has its own meaning, its own contribution. Maybe it's space for thinking, for processing, maybe for intuition to bubble up.
Could be. And their view on legacy really turns things on its head. Legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you leave open.
Okay, say more about that. We usually think of legacy as, the finished product, the buildings, the institutions, the money you accumulated, stuff you leave behind when you're gone.
Right. But this idea of leaving things open, it sounds more like creating possibilities.
Yeah.
Fostering ongoing growth, making sure there's space for whatever comes next, for future contributions.
Exactly. It's dynamic. It's alive, not static. A totally different way of thinking about your lasting impact.
Which leads us, I think, to the real core metaphor here. The grounding image for this whole perspective. The author writes, let me say it clearly, leadership is not a staircase. It's not a stage. It's not a spotlight.
And those are the common ones, aren't they? The staircase, that's hierarchy, climbing the ladder, getting to the top. The stage and spotlight, that's all about performance, visibility, being the center of attention, the star.
Yep. And he just rejects all of them, flat out. In favor of something completely different, he says, leadership is a field.
A field.
Yeah.
That's a massive shift spatially. You go from climbing up or being out front to something horizontal, something shared, a common ground.
So what kind of field is it? The source describes it as a space between souls.
Wow.
Right?
What?
So immediately the focus shifts. It's not just about the leader and their position or how well they perform. It's about the quality of the connection, the interaction between people. What matters is what happens in that shared space, in that field.
And in this field, the source argues, a whole different set of values become important, more important than the usual leadership metrics we track.
Like what?
Like presence matters more than polish. Polish is, how you look, how smooth your presentation is, the external stuff.
The facade.
Right. But presence? That's about your internal state. Are you fully attentive, engaged, authentic right here, right now, with the people around you?
And why does presence matter more? I mean, you can probably think of times you've dealt with someone super polished, looked great, sounded great, but they were kind of checked out.
Oh, totally. Already thinking about their next meeting, glancing at their phone.
Yeah. And then compare that to someone, maybe they're less polished, maybe a bit awkward even, but they are fully, genuinely with you, listening, connecting.
The impact is it's worlds apart, isn't it? That presence, that connection, it goes way deeper than any surface polish.
Makes sense. What else?
The source continues, where breath matters more than bravado. Bravado? That's the loud, boastful stuff, often covering up insecurity, maybe, projecting strength.
Yeah, the swagger.
But breath is life. It's calm, it's groundedness. So leading from breath means acting from an inner stillness from truth, not from a need to seem powerful or puff yourself up.
It sounds like leading from your center. When you're rooted in your breath, you're present. When you're operating out of bravado, you're probably performing for someone else, maybe driven by ego or fear even.
Exactly. And crucially, the source emphasizes where the quiet, steady heartbeat of your values matters more than your resume.
Okay. Resume versus values.
Your resume is your track record, right? What you've done, where you've been, titles, accomplishments. Your values, that's who you are, your core beliefs, your principles. And the source is arguing that in this field of leadership, your real living values, the ones you actually live out, they matter more. They have more impact than any list of past achievements.
Because the field is this space between souls. So there's the real human connection, the integrity, that builds the trust, that allows things to grow there, more than just an impressive CV.
That seems to be exactly the point. And the implication is huge, isn't it? It's asking you, the listener, to shift your focus. Maybe less focus on building that perfect external profile and more on cultivating a rich inner life and genuine connections with others.
Yeah, it's a different kind of work entirely. And this kind of leadership, it's probably not what you learn in a typical MBA program focused on, I don't know, strategy and finance.
Probably not. And the author acknowledges this. He talks about his own journey, saying he spent years unlearning what the world told me leadership had to be.
So what was he unlearning? What was that old model?
He describes it pretty bluntly. Top down, always sure, always loud.
Ah, okay. Yeah, we've all seen that model idealized, haven't we?
Yeah.
The decisive, never doubts themselves, commanding figure at the very top.
Mm-hmm. But then he contrasts that really sharply with the leaders he actually trusts most, the ones whose influence really lasts. And their qualities are basically the opposite of that old mold.
Okay, I'm curious. What are they?
He lists them out, and each one is worth kind of pausing on. First, they pause before they speak.
Not hesitation from uncertainty, but
Yeah.
deliberate.
Yeah, exactly. A choice. Create space. Listen fully first. Don't just react instantly.
In a world that values quick answers, fast comebacks, pausing feels like an act of quiet strength. It shows you're actually processing, considering, not just spitting out a script.
Totally. Then they ask questions they don't know the answers
So
to.
that requires humility, big time. It kind of shatters that myth that the leader has to know everything.
Right. And by asking real questions, they open things up. They invite everyone else's wisdom in. It becomes about co-creation, finding solutions together in that field.
Mm-hmm.
It empowers people.
Okay, what else?
They grieve in public.
Whoa, that's incredibly vulnerable.
Isn't it? But think about what it does. It allows for shared humanity. It acknowledges that loss, pain, disappointment, they're not things to hide behind some strong facade. They're real. And sharing them can actually build incredibly deep trust and connection. It shows you're authentic.
Yeah, okay. Keep going.
They make room for others to shine. This is the total opposite of the leader who needs to be the brightest bulb in the room. It's generosity. Seeing and fostering potential in others, making sure the whole ecosystem thrives because all the parts are flourishing. It's leading from abundance, not scarcity.
Well said. Then they fail with grace.
Not just shrugging it off, but...
Yeah, not pretending it didn't happen. It's acknowledging it, learning from it, but doing it in a way that maintains integrity. And it encourages resilience in others, too. It makes it okay to not be perfect. It builds a culture of learning, not blame.
That's huge for a team environment.
Absolutely. And finally, maybe one of the most powerful images. They rise not by stepping on others, but by lifting their teams like boats in rising tide.
Okay. So it completely throws out that staircase metaphor, the idea that you climb by pushing others down or out of the way.
Totally rejects it. Instead, the true leader, in this view, creates the conditions they raise the tide that lifts everyone in the field together. Their success isn't at the expense of others. It happens through elevating others. Wow. Okay, so look at those traits again. Pausing, asking real questions, grieving openly, making room, feeling with grace, lifting the whole team.
Yeah.
None of them are about your position on an org chart or power over people or showing off how dominant you are.
Not at all. They're all ways of being, ways of acting that cultivate that shared space, that space between souls. They make the field richer, more fertile ground for collaboration, trust, and everyone growing together.
Which naturally leads into this distinction the source makes between ego and legacy. It says ego makes noise.
And you can almost hear that noise, can't you? The ego demanding attention, needing validation, having to be right, dominating the conversation. It's loud, it's attention-seeking, and often probably pretty insecure underneath it all.
Yeah, but legacy leaves echoes.
Yeah.
And the source is specific. These echoes are subtle.
Subtle. Not the big, booming announcements of ego. Not the loud splash. They're quieter. They resonate. You feel them over time.
And where do these echoes live? The source gives these really beautiful, specific examples. Not in the headlines or the history books necessarily, but in moments others will never see.
Those quiet acts of support. The private conversation where you really listened. The decision you made with integrity when nobody was looking.
Yeah. And in the way you listen when someone is afraid. Just that simple, profound act, being present, showing empathy when someone's vulnerable. That creates an echo in their life, doesn't it? could stay with them for years. It wasn't about fixing it, just being with them in their fear.
That's powerful. Also, in the way you hold the line when your values are tested.
Okay, so when the pressure's on to cut corners, to compromise your principles, but you choose integrity, maybe quietly, no big fuss.
Right. That choice, holding that line, it sends a subtle signal, but a powerful one. An echo that reinforces what truly matters, even when it's inconvenient.
And in the way you say, I don't know, and still show up anyway.
Oof, that's hard. Admitting you don't have the answer, especially as a leader, but doing it while staying present, staying engaged, staying committed, that builds incredible trust. It creates an echo of authenticity, of shared humanity. We're figuring this out together.
So the significance here is,
Yeah.
wow, it's arguing that your real lasting impact, your legacy, isn't built in the flashy, visible stuff that feeds the ego.
Right.
It's built in the quiet moments, the often unseen moments, the human-centered moments that resonate with people and reinforce values over time. It's asking us to shift focus again, isn't it? From building a visible monument to cultivating a resonant field.
Beautifully put. Cultivating a resonant field. Yeah. Now, it's worth remembering the book this letter comes from, Global Leadership Insights 2030. It covers a lot of ground. Really complex, important topics.
Like the source mentions them briefly. Leadership across continents, intercultural stuff, ancient codes, archetypes, queer futures, allyship, ethical tech, digital trust, planetary care, even the quiet courage of people who just hold space. It's a wide range.
A very wide range. And as the source points out, this particular letter, it isn't trying to summarize all of that. You won't find like 5 steps to ethical AI or a guide to intercultural negotiation here.
Right. It's framed differently. It's more like a meta-reflection, maybe. It says it's not about adding more content, like more information, more strategies, more things to learn.
Instead, it's about fostering something else, something internal. It says it's about fostering contentment.
Ah, that play on words again.
Exactly.
Contentment, not just more content.
Exactly. So the focus isn't on piling up external knowledge or skills. It's about cultivating an internal state. And it clarifies it's not passive contentment, like just being satisfied and doing nothing. It's the active choice to lead from your core.
Leading from your core sounds like being deeply connected to your values, your purpose, who you really are.
And that's contrasted with leading from urgency, which feels familiar, right? Always reacting, driven by deadlines, external pressures, always feeling like you're behind or putting out fires.
Yeah, the hamster wheel. So leading from rootedness is the alternative.
That's the idea. It feels different, doesn't it? More proactive. Guided by an internal compass, grounded, stable, even when things are chaotic outside. It really makes you wonder, what does it actually mean to lead, to make decisions, to guide people from that place of inner stability and values instead of just being constantly reactive?
It's a deep question. And the source doesn't just make these points abstractly. It asks you, the listener, the future leader, some really powerful, direct questions. They feel designed to challenge those old assumptions and make you reflect.
Yeah, they really do. Consider the first one. Can you let go of the myth that you have to lead alone?
So much leadership imagery is solitary, isn't it? Captain alone on the bridge, the heroes saving the day by themselves.
Exactly. This question asks you to challenge that isolation. And if leadership is a field, well, leading alone doesn't even compute, right? A field needs interaction.
Good point. Then there's, can you release the pressure to be perfect, polished, prepared?
Back to presence versus polish. Breath versus bravado. Why do we feel that pressure so intensely? And what's the cost of keeping up that facade? Releasing it. That sounds like choosing authenticity, choosing vulnerability in the field.
It does. And then there's that beautiful analogy from nature. Can you remember that the trees don't compete? They communicate underground.
That's such a powerful image. And it's true scientifically. Forests have these vast networks, mycelial networks, connecting the trees, sharing resources, sending warnings.
So they thrive through collaboration, through mutual support, not by trying to outcompete each other for sunlight.
That's the idea. And the implication for us, for human leadership, for collaboration, it's profound. It challenges that default assumption that everything's a competition.
Yeah, it suggests maybe real resilience, real innovation, real strength comes not from trying to beat everyone else, but from building those deep, hidden networks of support, trust, shared resources, tending the ecosystem again, communicating underground.
Exactly. And finally, there's the question that kind of normalizes imperfection. That leadership doesn't mean never stumbling. It means learning how to fall forward together.
Falling forward together, not just falling, and not alone, stumbling, failing, they're going to happen in anything meaningful.
Right. This reframes it. It's not some personal shame you hide. It's a collective challenge, an opportunity for shared learning, shared growth within that field. Falling forward together implies vulnerability, sure, but also mutual support and resilience as a group.
So taken together, these questions really dismantle that old image of the lone, perfect, infallible leader. And they replace it with something much more connected, more authentic, more human.
And the source then loops back to Lóng Tíng Enterprises, giving more concrete examples of how this philosophy actually shows up in their day-to-day practices. They say, we practice values that breathe.
Values that breathe, what does that suggest?
Well, it suggests they aren't just static words on a poster, right? They're alive. They inform actual decisions. They guide interactions. Maybe they're even debated sometimes. They're actively embodied. Dynamic, not dusty. Part of the living field.
Okay. We leave blank space in our blueprints. Now that's fascinating. In a world obsessed with detailed plans, risk mitigation, controlling everything.
Right. Intentionally leaving room for the unknown, for emergence, for spontaneity, for contributions from others that you couldn't possibly have predicted.
That takes trust, doesn't it? Trust in the process, trust in your people, trust that good things will emerge in that open space you left.
Huge trust. It's a deliberate choice to let go of total control, to lead from presence and adaptability, not rigid planning.
Okay. We hold check-ins like rituals, not just meetings.
Ah, the difference there. A standard meeting can be purely transactional. Status updates, assigning tasks, moving on.
Yeah, but a ritual that's imbued with meaning, right? With intention,
Right.
with presence. So framing check-ins that way, it elevates those regular interactions, makes them moments of real human connection, maybe shared reflection, reaffirming purpose within the field.
Exactly. And then we believe presence is strategy.
Okay, connecting right back to that core idea of the field, being fully present with your team, with clients, with the challenges, that deep attention, that engagement. It's not just a soft skill or a nice to have.
No, it's positioned as a fundamental strategic advantage because it lets you perceive things others miss, the subtle cues. It lets you build real trust. It lets you respond authentically, effectively in the moment.
Makes sense. And the last one mentioned. And that wisdom can come from the youngest voice in the room.
Which directly challenges all those hierarchical assumptions about who knows best, doesn't it? It says valuable insights aren't limited by age or rank or years of experience. They can pop up anywhere in the ecosystem.
But you have to be humble enough and listen actively enough to hear them, to create a space where that youngest voice feels safe enough to actually speak up.
Precisely. So these practices, they paint a picture of an organization really trying to live this stuff, built on trust, intentionality, humility, and deep respect for everyone's contribution.
Which leads to what the source calls the truth I've come to know, a kind of powerful summing up.
Yeah. We don't need more charismatic leaders. We need more compassionate ones.
Charisma versus compassion. Charisma can grab attention, sure, but can also be shallow, maybe even manipulative sometimes.
Right. Whereas compassion, that's an internal state. Empathy, care. It connects leaders to the basic humanity of the people they're leading. It's about that shared feeling within the field.
And the second part, we don't need louder voices. We need truer ones.
Loudness can dominate, yeah. But truth resonates. A true voice speaks from the core, from authenticity, from values. Even if it's quiet, it has that echo we talked about. A loud voice might just be noise.
So the source is clearly prioritizing the leader's inner quality, their compassion, their truthfulness, their rootedness, their presence, over the external performance or the projection that we often mistake for leadership. It's a call for leadership grounded in being, not just doing or performing.
Exactly. Which brings it all back full circle to that idea of legacy as echoes. But now it's framed slightly differently, as a whisper. What will your leadership whisper into the silence you leave behind?
A whisper. So subtle, intimate. You have to be close, paying attention to hear a whisper.
It's the perfect image for those subtle echoes, isn't it? The ones felt in the space between souls, in the quiet moments, in the values that last.
And the source offers possibilities for what that whisper could be. Will it whisper kindness? Will it whisper justice? Will it whisper courage in a language only the next generation can hear?
Wow. That last part. A language only the next generation can hear, suggesting the deepest impact might not even be felt fully by your peers, but by those who come after. The ones who can tune into the subtle frequency of your integrity, your values, long after you're gone.
It leaves the answer open, though. It trusts that you, the listener, you hold that potential already. Because, as it says so gently, you showed up. And that truly is sacred.
Just the act of engaging with this, seeking this deeper way, being willing to listen beyond the noise, that's seen as significant in itself, a sacred commitment to maybe trying a different path.
And it places you, the listener, in this bigger picture, too. It says, you are part of something ancient and new. You are part of a turning.
Acknowledging that we're in a time of huge change. And this perspective on leadership is presented as kind of essential for navigating that turning point well, humanely.
And it emphasizes the responsibility, the power you hold, and how you lead will shape how that turning feels. It gives stark options, doesn't it, for the impact your leadership could have on this global shift. Will it feel sharp, violent, or gentle like spring?
That's a heavy question. Your personal approach to leadership isn't just about you. It shapes the collective experience of change for everyone in your field, your ecosystem.
The final call from the source feels like both a plea and a vision. Let us choose legacy that doesn't wound.
Recognizing that maybe some traditional leadership models, the ego-driven, empire-building ones, have caused harm, and calling for a choice towards a path that heals, that nurtures, that builds instead.
And that powerful reminder, power is not the same as presence.
Yeah, you can have one without the other. And the source clearly values presence, that grounded, authentic connection in the shared field, way more than just the ability to exert power over others.
And that being here, fully here, is the first revolution. It grounds everything right back in the present moment, before you can change the world, before you can lead anyone through a major turning.
You have to fully inhabit yourself first, and fully inhabit the space you share with others. Presence isn't just a tactic, it's the foundation, the first revolutionary act.
So the source wraps up by saying it leaves you not with a formula, but with a field.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a checklist, not a step-by-step plan to follow rigidly, but this expansive space for your own ongoing exploration, your own reflection, your own growth in your own unique way.
A space to return to, a question to hold, a whisper you can choose to echo. It's like an invitation, isn't it? Carry these ideas with you. Revisit that feeling of the field inside yourself and on how you interact with others. Keep pondering the questions. And consciously choose the kind of subtle impact, the kind of whisper you want your leadership to create.
Yeah. And it ends with this series of wishes for your journey, a final vision of what this kind of leadership could look and feel like. May your leadership be light.
And it clarifies. Not light as in easy, but light as in luminous. Bringing clarity, insight, maybe positive energy to the spaces you're in.
May it make room. Always creating space for others, for new possibilities, for what you don't know yet.
May it tend to roots, staying grounded, connected to your source, nurturing the foundations.
May it rise quietly like the tide without asking permission. That feeling of natural, inevitable growth. Powerful, but not pushy, not needing external validation, just being.
May it be yours, and may it be ours. That beautiful balance, acknowledging it's your deeply personal journey, but also recognizing leadership is always interconnected. It's a shared responsibility for that collective field.
And then, maybe the most radical, most hopeful wish of all. And may it remind the world that even leadership can be love.
Wow. Suggesting that underneath it all, leadership doesn't have to be about transactions or power plays. It can be a profound expression of care, of connection, of really tending to the well-being of others and the health of that shared space.
This deep dive into A Letter to the Future Leader, it really does offer a vision that turns things inside out, doesn't it? Shifting leadership away from the external chase for power and status towards the internal work of cultivating presence, values, and real human connection within that shared field.
Yeah, it doesn't give you easy answers, but it definitely leaves you with a different way of seeing the questions, and maybe a profound sense of possibility for the kind of leader you could choose to become.
So for you listening, what aspects of tending that field resonate most strongly? What subtle whisper do you hope your own leadership might leave behind one day? Lots to think about.